How can we tell if a stock is over or undervalued on the market? So if you remember from our previous video, a stock just tells us about ownership of a business. And fundamentally what we're doing when we're valuing a stock is we're valuing that underlying business. One of the ways we can do this is by using the price to earnings ratio, also called the PE ratio. Now this is the market price of the share divided by the earnings per share. So earnings per share being if we took the earnings of that business and we divided them by the number of shares, that would tell us how much each individual share earned in that given period. For example, if the share price was £140 and the earnings per share were £4, then our PE ratio would be 35. Now this in and of itself doesn't tell us too much. The way that PE ratios can be used is in comparison between different businesses. So for example, Ford, the automobile manufacturer, have a PE ratio of 8.14. Now Tesla, what do you think their PE ratio is? 55.32. Both of these businesses are in the same industry, the automotive industry. So why is it that Ford have a much lower PE rating than Tesla? And how could we determine between those two which stock could be under or overvalued? So part of the reason that Tesla has a very high PE ratio is because the market price is factoring in future earnings. So what people believe is going to happen is as electric vehicles become more common, more people will be buying them, and therefore Tesla will receive more business and therefore more earnings. And people think this is quite likely because they're pricing this into the share price today, which is why it's so high. Whereas Ford is an old business, it's been around for a very long time, and maybe it doesn't have the same growth potential that Tesla do. And here you see the thing, we have these ratios, but on their own and without further research, they don't mean very much, but they do give us an idea of the value of the firm. Another way we can value stocks is by what we call the price to book ratio. What this is the market price divided by the book value per share. What the book value per share tells us is if the business was to be sold today and they settled all of their outstanding liabilities and sold all of their assets, how much would each share get of the eventual sell-off? So for example, Shell have a PB ratio of 1.05, whereas BP have a price to book ratio of 1.42. Just for comparison, Tesla have a PB ratio of 13.89, whereas Ford have a PB ratio of 1.25. We can see here the differences between these PB ratios and investigate what is causing them. For example, that investors are pricing into today's future book value of Tesla. So actually the business may be worth more in 10 years time, but they're pricing that in today. So to summarize then, there's lots of different ways we can measure the value of a stock. And these are just two of them. The way I like to think about it is the PE ratio kind of shows us the business's muscles, so how it's working every single year, whereas the price to book ratio basically shows us the skeleton of that business. So if you want to find out more about valuing stocks and shares, then make sure you follow the channel because there'll be more videos coming up. You can also follow me on Patreon in order to get access to exclusive Q&As. Until next time, bye bye.